To solve the world's biggest challenges, you have to add the right people to the equation. People who add unlimited resourcefulness to finding solutions. Solutions that help conserve water, keep food safe, energy flowing, and infection at bay. Because in a world where challenges never quit, neither do we.
So we're going to begin with Geoff Townsend, who works with Ecolab, and he himself, is mainly concentrated on water and this water energy food nexus. So, Geoff.
And thank you for this opportunity to contribute to the very useful discussion today. In John's opening remarks, first thing this morning, he alluded to the CDP report, which shows that a very high proportion of their respondents, I think it's around about 2/3, see water as posing a very significant risk to their operations in the future. And yet only 20%, I think it's actually less than 20%, have a detailed plan to address these concerns. So why is there such a disparity? And why such paralysis? And I would guess that most of the respondents to the CDP survey would actually be Ecolab customers, possibly corporate accounts. So we're making it our business to actually try and understand why there's this tremendous disparity. And to understand the disconnects, and this is really typified in corporate water goals, where they have some very, very challenging goals set at a corporate level, and yet at the facility level, there's tremendous struggle to actually facilitate these goals, actually to make the necessary improvements. So why is this? Well, there are several areas, or several reasons why, and I think we've touched on many of these today. And the first is tremendous confusion over spatial scale. I think this point was made earlier. We need to set boundaries and be very precise about the boundaries we set to actually focus on. And probably the best boundary we can set at the moment is the boundary set by the catchment. So even with all the complexities of the water, food, energy nexus, and obviously some of those are operating at regional levels, national levels, affected by different policies, even in that context, it's probably best to focus on the water component in the light of a local catchment. But once we've actually identified that boundary, we need to set very clear goals for that catchment. And I see this as absolutely essential, because small facilities operating in that catchment are used to targets, are used to actually meeting goals. It's part of their DNA as an operation to do so. So if you actually ask them to reduce their water consumption by 15 to 20%, they'll probably do it. So what we need is clarity on the goals. So between May and September, reduce by 30%, or reduce eutrophiants, phosphate nitrite by X% and such like, and to have those goals prioritized. Now, I know that's a big ask, but I do see this as a role, a very important role that NGOs can play, because they're seen as objective, and they're seen as not having an interest, like an organization perhaps like ourselves. So if you actually galvanize NGO interest at a very local level, producing top 3, top 5 goals that these facilities can actually aim for, I think that'll be a major step in the right direction. But then if we are going to engage NGOs at the very local level, how are we going to fund that? And I think one of the mechanisms is actually to reach out to all of the stakeholders in that particular catchment and ask that they will fund the NGO activity in a very practical way. So that we define the amount of money, we engage in the appropriate level of research, so there's a high degree of confidence that the changes that are being demanded on the facilities are actually going to make a difference. And I think that's one of the other disconnects that we've identified. How then do we get a critical pathway between water security, energy security, food security, and these specific local goals? And I would suggest that there's 4 or 5 steps in that pathway, and I'll be very brief. The first thing you need to do to build security is really to focus on resilience, the resilience of the operation, the resilience of the local environment. And you cannot build resilience without managing risks. And also you can't reduce risks without appropriate investment. And one of the key themes today is to communicate that to the people that hold the purse strings. And that's one of the reasons why we as an organization in the last couple of days have launched the water risk monetizer, because we see it's absolutely paramount that we convert risk into, monetize it. And then from monetization, you can then prioritize where your investment goes. At least you've got a scale, understanding of a scale of investment. And then the remaining challenge is where do I funnel that investment? Do I apply it at the facility level, become more water efficient? And certainly there's a whole plethora of different technologies and systems that can make operations much more water efficient, even in the context of reusing a lot of water, with all the challenges that pose to industry, with higher corrosion potential, scaling potentials that impacts thermal efficiency and such like. These are longer term, more subtle risks that we have to address as industry. But at least we understand what we can do at the facility level. But that's not really where the biggest challenge lies. And I think SAB Miller touched on this eloquently today. The big challenge is outside of the facility fence. How do you engage with other stakeholders within the catchment? And in fact, most of the customers that we deal with would actually see that they're increasing their reputational risk if they start collaborating at the catchment level. That means disclosure of information. It means, it's this is sensitive information. They feel very, very uncomfortable with such a process. So how practically can we drive collaboration at the catchment level? Well, one way is if we have these catchment goals, we're going to try and encourage alignment to those goals, because the very first step of collaboration is this alignment. And I think that's a very practical way to manage some of these very real issues that we are facing at the catchment level.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed.